All right, and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today, his Moviness and I are going to take a look at the Marvel miniseries Secret Invasion. Was it, was it the spy thriller that the MCU promised, or was it another dog's egg? But before we dive into it, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. And we are trying to shoot for, well, keep saying 50, but any number of subscribers will do just to help the channel grow. And please let us know in the comments below what you think. Do you agree with us, or do you think we're just talking BS? Um, the more comments we get, it shows that you're engaging with us. And yes, we do check the comments section. Well, I check it regularly. His moviness is busy managing other people.
I'm too pompous to have to do all that bullshit. So
that's why he has me do all of that.
yep.
Speaking of which, I found the perfect Bible for you. It's the New York Times 1,000 movies you must see. It's 1,300 pages. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that book for you because that is the proper size for a Bible, and I can see you just like opening it and be like, well, according to the movie Bible here, you know. So let's dive into Secret Invasion. I do want to say I only saw the first episode when it came out. That was back in June, and I was just so disenchanted by it. I stopped watching it. But then when we decided that this was going to be the next thing we were going to review, I sat down on a Tuesday afternoon at 5 o'clock and I watched the remaining 5 episodes.
I'm sorry.
And can I just say, if you were to look up sadomasochism in the dictionary, that would be used as an example. Watching all 5 or 6 episodes of a Marvel miniseries, back to back without a break. I mean, yeah, I really regret doing that. I should have just stuck with my original plan and just watched 2 episodes per day. But you live and learn. So just to start off, this is the latest venture in what is it phase? Is it phase 4? I'm losing track now. Phase 4 or 5 of the whole MCU.
Yeah, I think it's still phase 4, right? Because doesn't I think Aquaman 2 ends phase 4? I think.
That's the wrong franchise.
Okay, I did. What? Where are we now? I don't know.
Secret Invasion, MCU.
Oh yeah, Secret Invasion. Yep.
we're so superhero fatigued. We're starting to mix our heroes. we just don't give a shit anymore. So what's different about Secret Invasion is the fact that, unlike the previous Marvel shows, there aren't any superheroes in it. It's just Nick Fury, Maria Hill, and a few other people just running around, just trying to locate and stop the Skrulls. What did you? Before we go any further in details, your moviness. What was your initial impression when you first heard about Secret Invasion when it came out?
I'm not gonna lie, I had some hope. I thought that the idea was interesting. I thought it could be a really fun kind of spy thriller because you have the Skrulls that can literally turn into anybody, right? Literally anybody. They can literally turn into anybody. So like, oh, that's a cool premise. I really liked the Captain America one that was really based upon kind of like them. It was a lot more down to earth, which is what I enjoyed. So
wait, so are you talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Captain America and the Winter Soldier?
I'm sorry. What was the second Captain America? I'm drawing a blank.
The Winter Soldier.
Winter Soldier, thank you. Yes. So
okay.
Like I enjoyed that one because it felt a lot more down to earth. I like how there was kind of that whole mystery around it of, we got Hydra in there and, who's working, who can you trust? And I thought that one was really well done. I really like that. And then this came out and then I totally was not into it at all. So I had high hopes going into it. And, after the first episode, I was not quite like, I wasn't like, this is like the worst thing I ever saw. There's a little bit of intrigue there, but as it progressed, it got worse and worse. And then to me, it just totally flounder throughout the whole series, and I thought the ending was absolute garbage.
Right. So
So I guess we'll get into that, but I had high hopes, and they were very quickly dashed.
so I so so I sort of agree with you on that point because because what they did in Captain America and the Winter Soldier kind of set the tone that Marvel could do a proper spy thriller. So so when you see the trailer and you read about the premise, you think, oh, okay, so basically they're taking the level of thriller intrigue that you got in the Winter Soldier and applying it to Secret Invasion, which is based on a Marvel comic storyline from I think from
Yes.
either the late '90s or early 2000s, and it had a lot of promise too because because whereas with Winter Soldier, you were dealing with a human adversary who could hide in plain sight. The scrolls were different because they could hide in plain sight, but there was more to them. They had a more a more sinister agenda. What did you so what did you think about the whole premise for what the I guess rogue scrolls were doing?
I mean, it was just it was dumb. The whole thing, like from top to bottom, their whole purpose, the whole premise, it was just all just so stupid. Like really, what it came down to, it felt like Gravik, right, who's the rogue scroll leader, right?
Yeah.
It just felt like he was bitter about what Nick Fury did, and I could understand that to a certain perspective, right? I get that, Fury made commitments for them to find a new world, right? And he, kind of made an effort, but then it just kind of didn't happen. And I can understand a little bit of where Gravik's hatred would come from. Now, do I feel like that's going to justify, like, oh yeah, we want to just destroy everything? So, and I think they said there's like a million scrolls that live there, so a million scrolls could be there. It's like no, and then the whole thing is, it's like, why not just have them, be like, have their own area, right? Like we saw Thor, right, do that, where you have the survivors, kind of living in their own area, and I'm like, why can't the scrolls do that? Like you already have it set up for this other group that has like their own little place on Earth that they're living in, and then they're just like, okay, I guess that's not a possibility for the scrolls because I don't know, they're green and they could transform. So I guess like if you look like Shrek, then you're fucked. We're just not gonna allow you to have the same privileges as other people. I just it totally baffled me, and it just didn't really it didn't really have a it didn't hold the story didn't hold any water to me.
Right. Well, what I thought was interesting was that Gravik kept changing, some of the details to their, quote unquote plan, because if I remember correctly, initially it was to kidnap the president of the United States, and then it was to attack and kill him. But then they were like, "Oh no, we actually need him alive." And as I was watching, I'm like, "This guy, this guy really doesn't know what he wants because he keeps changing his mind the entire time." What did you think about that? Because you would think that there would be some sort of consistency and they would sort of execute it, down to the finest detail. But it felt like for a guy who was supposed to be in charge, he was all over the place.
Yeah, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense, right? And then like you're really kind of hoping that by the end of it, you're really hoping that the president is going to bomb this area in Russia, which, of course they're in Russia, so we could have this, kind of ongoing tension with Russia. We had the Red Scare, and we're still on that whole, like, Russia is going to sit there and cause like the next war. And it just was like, okay, cool. Do I really feel like the president is going to start a war on like some like shitty type of intel from I guess Rhodey, who was a scroll, which, like I said, would have been interesting if they didn't spoil that, but I guess, I'll get into that later. But it's just like, do we really believe that the president is going to sit there and do all this shit and go to war over these scrolls? Answer is absolutely not. Like, that's not going to happen. It made zero sense for his plan to eventually get around to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a testament to just how bad the writing was, because it just felt like everybody was all over the place. Like they would, and I read somewhere too that that there were a lot of loose ends that didn't get resolved, and I feel like episode one kind of starts a thread, but by the time you get not even episode six, but by episode 4 or 5, it's like whatever happened to that? It kind of goes back to what I was saying about what Gravik was playing, because Gravik would say, well, we need to do this, and that doesn't work, and he changes his mind, does something else, and you're like, how about sticking to what you were going to do in the first place?
Yeah. Well, here's another one for you, right? So let me ask you a question, right?
Yeah.
Why did they keep the people alive? The scrolls.
Well, if I understand it correctly, they need to access their memories. I'm not entirely sure, because I was watching them like you could just get rid of them once you've assumed their identity.
Right? Like that's what I was thinking too. Like, do they have some type of weird thing? And like I said, maybe I missed this, so maybe
Because
I'll get
I mean,
like,
because if you think about it,
but
well,
you know,
no, well, no, I was gonna say, because if you think about it, if that person's unconscious, they're only gonna remember everything up to the point that they got kidnapped, and then whatever happens after that, they're not gonna remember anything. So why even bother with that?
yeah. It's like cool. Like if you want to do that, it's like cool. I get your consciousness, and I know like your memories or whatever, and then you're dead, right? Like there's literally no reason to keep them alive. That's what was super confusing, because it's like, okay, like sure, if you want to say like, oh, they're remaining there so we can get memories from them, but that just sounds stupid. So I like I said, that I guess that makes as much sense as anything, but that goes to what you said earlier. The writing was so bad. It's like you could just really throw anything out there, and we're just gonna try to talk away a huge plot hole based upon like, oh well, I guess they, we have to keep them alive, because really what it is you don't want to get rid of these characters, right? Like, it would be cool if like, oh, Rhodey got killed, like that would be a hell of a thing to happen.
Mhm.
But obviously, they don't have the guts to do that. The only thing that they're willing to do was to kill, Maria Hill, excuse me, Maria Hill, who, like I said, I mean, who really cares about Maria Hill, right? Like, yeah, she's there. Like, we've seen her a lot with Nick Fury, but we don't really know anything about her. And like I said, I do really like Ben Mendelsohn as Talos, but once again, I couldn't care any less about his character. So it's
they were underused. That's
for sure.
I mean, that's what I kept thinking. I'm like, you kill Maria Hill after one episode. I'm like, come on. I mean, this is someone who has played a significant role in Nick Fury's career. I figured she would at least last a little bit longer.
Yeah, or at least build up more to her death, right? Because we see her with, Nick Fury a lot, but we don't really see a whole lot of interaction. It would have been so much more interesting to see more of them be able to interact with each other, because really they play back seats for most of the time in these movies. Like they don't get a whole lot of screen time together, and then it was just like, we're just gonna kill her off. And the reason is because it's just there. It's a cheap way to get people hooked, right? Like, oh, they killed Maria Hill. That's really engaging, but really it's not, right? They're willing to get rid of all these B characters that no one really cares about. Like if you actually went out there and you killed Rhodey, I'd be like, you know what? At least you did something. You had the balls, you had the guts to do something. But like I said, they play it safe. You get rid of these characters that really either have very minimal impact, or it's just something to be like, oh yeah, I know her, or hey, yeah, I know Ben Mendelsohn's character. And then eventually they're just gone, and it's like, okay, it didn't really leave an impact on me at all. And I think that's how I'm gonna always remember the show. Something that leaves absolutely zero impact.
Well, I was gonna say, could you imagine if they pulled a Black Widow and decided to give Maria Hill a mini series as well? Because I mean, they
Oh
killed.
man, don't give them ideas, Luca. Some producers will be like, "Oh man, that's great! Like, we could talk about Maria Hill because people really care about her. We could, give her a new story so we can learn more about her character after she's dead."
Me and my big mouth. I mean, to be fair, they already did it with Black Widow after they killed her in,
Yes.
in whatever Infinity War. So, I mean, who's to say some bozo up there is gonna be like, you know what? We do need more content. How about Maria Hill? But I was gonna say
let's
too.
just stick my hand in the bag of random characters. Oh, Maria Hill. I guess that's the next one we're gonna do a story about.
I was gonna say too because because I genuinely liked Ben Mendelsohn as Talos. I thought
For
he did a
sure.
phenomenal job. I just felt like the interaction between him and Nick Fury was forced because it was like it was that one scene in the pub where he's eating breakfast, and then Nick Fury's like, "Oh, are you eating dog slops?" And he's like, "Oh, well, I'm not now." And I'm like, I'm like, I sort of get what they're doing here. They're trying to create like the sort of like buddy camaraderie relationship, kind of like what you would see in those cop films in the 70s and 80s. But it just falls flat on its face because if they are trying to be humorous, if they are trying to rib each other, they're not doing a very good job. You know what I mean? And
Not
it's
at
like,
all.
and it's like the entire relationship. It's like I'm not sure if they're friends or if it's like a boss employee relationship.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, Fury's like, I trust you, Talos. You're a good, buddy of mine. Just paraphrasing here. And Talos, on the other hand, is like, well, you sent us to do all these missions for years and years, and we're doing all the dirty work, et cetera, et cetera. And you don't, and you never really appreciate us. I'm sorry. I'm supposed, the movies made me are telling me I need to like Nick Fury, but the series here is telling me I should really hate him because he's a dick to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's
That's very true.
because it's very conflicting because it's like the movies are saying one thing, but the TV show is saying another. So then you're like, well, what is it? Like, if you're trying to create a complex character, you haven't done your job because now I don't know if I should like or hate Nick Fury. Whether or not he's the guy who brought together the Avengers, or if he's just so old and irresponsible, he's just having people killed left, right, and center, and he doesn't even blink an eye. You know. So what did you so what did you think of Talos?
I liked them. I mean, I at least I liked I think I liked Ben Mendelsohn's acting more than I cared about the character.
Yeah.
Because obviously, he was kind of there to, kind of be the person there that's, kind of making the most sense, right? He's the one that's, trying to stop the conflict of everything. And then, he has a direct connection with, Gaia, whatever the fuck Emily Clark's name was. So, you have her being a part of it, and, you have kind of the relationship that we kind of get, barely any information on because, I guess we couldn't spend time developing that. So you just kind of find out that information just kind of gets thrown into your face about it. So he's kind of the one that I guess is like helping her be a double agent or a triple agent or however you want to be looking at that. So I mean, I like Talos, but like he was very much a one trick, like, oh, we don't want to do this, even though Nick Fury, got erased in the blip. And then, he's been off planet for a long time. I'm like, why does Talos have this much like faith in Nick Fury? Like, what's really warranted this? Because we don't really see them interact, right? Like, we see it in the Captain Marvel movie, and obviously that's an older movie, but like we don't really see a whole lot of interaction outside of that. So it's like, dang, Fury was gone for 5 years, right, during the blip, and then you also have him gone for, and I forget how long he said, where he's just out in space, kind of retired before he comes back. And I'm like, dang, like, Talos really has a whole lot of respect for this guy that's pretty much been vacant over the past decade. So I just, it really didn't make any sense. And the show didn't really help justify or give me any confidence in the type of friendship they were allegedly having.
Or lack of, really.
Yes, or lack thereof, which is far more likely.
So yeah, because when I was watching it, like I said before, I never really got a sense that there was any camaraderie between the two, and even then, I mean, most of their banter kind of fell short because it really didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, they felt more like business partners, right? Like that's to me how I look at it, right? They're business partners. So it's like, Fury's like, hey, if you do this espionage for us, then, I'll help you find a planet, right? That's how I've always looked at it. Look more of like a business agreement as opposed to anything else. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have developed a bond or a friendship over that time. But like I said, when you work in the world of, having a TV show, we actually want to see that happening, not just have it be implied that it happened behind the scene.
Yeah, so when Talos dies, trying to get the president out, I know I should be feeling sad, but I just felt indifferent, because it was like the way you set it up, it really didn't give much for me or anybody to care about what happened to Talos.
Yep, didn't register all, just like Murray Hill. Like when she got shot, I was like, oh, okay. Well, that was shocking. And then
That
I
was
moved on.
that was another death crossed off the list.
Yes,
Uh,
I was like, oh, cool. Well, that was something. Well, anyways. And yeah, Talos was the same. I must have totally zoned out during that moment because I totally forgot. I mean, I know he died, but I could not tell you at what stage that happened because I was just so uninterested at a certain stage where I'm pretty sure my brain just kind of shut off and I was on autopilot as I was watching the episode. So I probably couldn't even tell you at what stage. I definitely remember the incident where they're doing that, but I'll be damned if I could tell you when Talos eventually died. So that's how very little I really got engaged or cared about that aspect of the story.
yeah, and I just wanted to circle back to Gravik. I mean, not only do his goals keep shifting, but how but you also kind of wonder what exactly is he after? Is he really after trying to help his people, or is he just out trying to help himself? Because you remember he builds that that little chamber where he
Yes,
charges himself up. What did you think about that?
that was the most painfully stupid thing. It was just such trash. Like it's like cool. So you know what? We're gonna kind of not have anyone have superpowers, but then we're gonna be like, you know what? Now we're just gonna make sure that he gets all the superpowers. Right now, you're just gonna have all of them, and it's just like it totally takes you out of the story because it's just silly. Like what is the purpose? Like that whole final fight at the end, like it was the most boring, totally uninteresting thing. Like, I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but that was just absolute trash. Like, I don't know what they were thinking in that whole thing. It's just like, cool. Now he has all these superpowers. So how are we gonna deal with it? Oh, well, we'll give Gaia all the superpowers too. And then now we can just have them have a fight with superpowers, superpowers that they've never used before, but we're just all gonna have it. And it just felt so it felt so
Well,
cliche. Like
forced. Yeah.
it was manipulative. Like it was literally like, oh, let's just have the audience. Like, yeah, we'll have Gaia flex like the what's his face.
There are many what's his
Yeah, I
face.
know, I know. But like Drax, right? So, and then you see like Drax's arm. I'm like, okay, like whatever. And then like, she, kind of does all this stuff, and then it was just like, no, this is lame. Like this is just cheap now. Like you're just giving everyone superpowers, and it makes zero sense because really, if they were this strong, then they would be able to destroy everything. It makes no sense. You can't just sit there and give people like all these powers and try to make it make any level of sense in the whole thing. I just it absolutely drove me insane. And like as I said, Gravik's whole character, it just felt like someone on a personal vendetta that went out of control.
Right,
Like I
right.
don't know who would follow him. It made no sense that they wouldn't follow him. I sure shit wouldn't follow that guy. I mean, I'm sure it sounded good, like, oh, we want to have a place to call our own. Well, I mean, you could have just like figured that out on Earth, right? I don't think it's that hard to find a place that's out there. I'm not saying it'd be easy, but I mean, it doesn't like they make it sound like some type of impossible chore, and I just didn't see it. And then, like I said, like he's out there, like he's having people do all this stuff. You have people going out there bombing and everything like that. I'm like, holy shit, is this really what all these people are following? Is this really what you're looking for in a leader? Like it totally boggled my mind. I was totally out of it from beginning to end.
So So what did you think about the final episode where Gravik is asking for the harvest?
I'm sorry though. Oh yes, yeah. I mean, yeah. It was just, it was just, it was so bad. Like it was just like, oh, this is great. So now we're just gonna like, he's just gonna get all these superhero powers, and I like how they all flash up on the screen. So this way we know about all the different things he's gonna be getting, like Ebony Maw and all that stuff. And I'm just like, no, like this totally takes you out of it because it's never it's not going to last. Like you just know it's going to happen. Like you can't just be like, oh, we'll just have them combine all these powers together and we're going to create some type of sensible character. No, of course it's not going to happen. Like at that stage, that there's nothing that's going to happen. He's going to have to lose because you can't have that guy just be out there in the world with all these powers. Like it just made no sense. And it just like it going back to what I said earlier, it just feels like a guy that doesn't know what he wants. He's pissed at the world, and he just wants to see the world born almost. Like, and I think to your point, the reason he changes his mind all the time is because he doesn't even know what he wants. He just wants to do shit, and it doesn't really matter what happens.
Right.
He's just a charismatic leader that somehow gets all these people to follow him, and they just go out there and they just do shit. It just makes no sense between we're gonna do bombings, and then we're gonna have we want to have the president bomb the compound so we can start a war, and then I'm gonna get superpowers, and it's just like, my guy, you're doing too much. Like, just pick a path and stick with it. Don't have something that changes every other damn episode.
Well, it's funny is when he first gets those superpowers and they attack the president's convoy, with all those men. I was thinking, if you have all these powers, why do you even need guns and all that stuff? You could just attack the convoy by yourself. like I don't understand why you would even go through this facade of trying to, be Russian terrorists attacking Americans in England. Just flex your muscles. But
yeah,
it's whatever.
It makes no sense. Makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. And like I said, I could tell you exactly why they did it like that, because it'd be too expensive if they gave him all the powers and it made sense.
Yeah.
Right. That's what happens, right? Writers write you in a corner. It's like, well, yeah, well, he's got all these powers now. Well, budget says that we can't do that. We can't be sitting here having all these powers going off. So we're just going to kind of still have them out there. And, and I always like the fact too that the Skrulls, like, they're always, mainly they're in their human form a lot, right? Like they never change people or change to different people at any stage. Like it's always just kind of the same person that they keep a face for. And it's like, okay, if I'm someone that can, change faces all the time, why would I want to be a guy that's plastered everywhere as being a huge villain, right? Wouldn't it be great if like I just blend in to something else? Like it just totally makes zero sense and it falls flat on its premise.
Well, what makes even less sense was the fact that Gravik gets the extremist virus, so he can super heal, but then but then when Gaia kills him, he doesn't heal instantly. He just lays there dead. I'm like, we've seen him heal, pretty rapidly, in the past few episodes whenever he gets injured. Now you expect me to believe Gaia just punches a hole in his chest and he's just dead. Is that it? It's like, all right, I guess this is where we're going because that's what the writers want us to believe.
Yep. I mean, there's nothing to do because reality would stick in at a certain stage and be like, hey, you know what? This makes no sense, but we have to wrap up this 6-episode shitfest somehow, so might as well just, sure, yeah, he just, gets a whole punch to them, and that's the end,
Yeah, he doesn't heal from that. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Just move on. We have to get to this amazing backstory of how Nick Fury's been in love with a Krull for decades, right? That was more important to have as the final conclusion.
So I do want to touch on that. What did you think about that whole, I guess, B or C or D story of Nick Fury and his Skrull wife?
Well, like totally, like what was the purpose of this? Like
it didn't add anything to the story at all, and I was like,
yeah, it did nothing, right? I mean, I guess you could argue that it shows Nick Fury can't identify Skrulls because he talks all the time, like how it's like, oh, I can't really tell them, or I'm getting better at it. So like him having his wife be a Skrull is like, oh, well, clearly he's not getting it. But yeah, exactly to your point, like there really is nothing to it. It doesn't add or enhance the story in any way. It's just, some shit that's happening, behind the scenes. And it's just like, who cares? Like, I don't care about this. This gives me no engagement. Like, do I care about, you know, his Skrull wife at all? No, you know, I have no thoughts about this. It's doesn't change anything. It doesn't make the story any better. It just felt like some random thing to throw out there that they're like, well, I guess we'll just have this be a thing. And it's like you already have enough conflicting storylines without having some random thing with his wife. And I guess I was supposed to be happy at the end that he's like accepting of her. Like, I don't know. I have literally no idea what they were trying to get across or what the purpose of that whole relationship was supposed to be.
Well,
It made absolutely no sense.
what was confusing to me was at first I didn't know if he knew she was a Skrull or if she was like replicating, you know, his wife who had been, you know, who had been kidnapped, and then, you know, she was impersonating, you know, his kidnapped wife so she can keep tabs on him. But then you come to find out, oh, you know, I met this dying woman and she'd never fallen in love, so she'll take her face and then she can fall in love with Nick Fury, but she had to promise the dying lady never to hurt her lover. And I'm like, that is one of the most convoluted bullshit I have ever heard. Like, why would you even go into that?
Yeah, I mean, talk about like a long con, right? Like, I mean, holy shit, yeah, like, yeah, we're just gonna sit there, we're just gonna pretend like, yeah, I'll just go 30 years, you know, in this relationship for, you know, the sake of someone I don't know. Like, it just, yeah, it was, it was hard to watch. This was probably one of the worst, like, Marvel, any type of thing I've seen. Definitely one of the worst shows, but that's not saying a lot because most of them have been pretty bad. But I mean, I think this one takes the cake.
Right, right. So I know we mentioned it earlier. But what do you think about that whole reveal that, you know, Rhodey is actually a Skrull?
I mean, it just shows that the writers don't get how to build drama, right? You know what would have been more interesting? How about we suspect Rhodey's a Skrull, but we actually never see it, right? That'd be interesting, right? That's what you need to do, right? Like the whole purpose of this is to create this narrative that you have these people that could literally shapeshift into anybody they see, right? They can shapeshift into these people. So you have this guy that becomes Rhodey, and then you spoil it by showing Rhodey is indeed a Skrull. And I'm just like, why? Like, it should have been something where you don't know, and you're working this idea like, okay, is Rhodey, you know, doing what he feels like is right, and is he just wrong, or is he doing it because he's a Skrull? And that's really what would have been interesting to have, but then they don't do that, and they fail to do that time and time again. And I'm like, why would you do this whole thing where you have this group of people that could do it, and then you never actually follow through on it? Like, they're always just the same people. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, you're doing this, and I get narratively, you know, if you have someone changing all the time, it's hard for you to adapt to the character. So I get that there are some challenges with trying to create this narrative with people that can constantly change, but you do it so little, it almost makes it pointless to do it. Like, I mean, oh, cool, Rhodey's a Skrull. Well, whatever, that's spoiled for me now. Now, whenever I see him doing stuff, I know that it's a Skrull doing it, and eventually there's just going to have to be some type of conflict. It'd been way more interesting if it's like, oh, you know, is Rhodey a Skrull? I have no idea. Is the president a Skrull? I have no idea. Right? Like, you know, who knows? Like, this could be a totally long con where it's like, oh, the president's been a Skrull this whole time, and all they need is to have someone pushing it, and then they're going to blame Rhodey or something. Like, oh, you know, Rhodey, he's the one that told me to do all this stuff. And then it's like, oh, but really this was my plan all along. I just needed to have a scapegoat for it. You know, just anything would have been more interesting than what they did on screen.
I mean, I mean, to our point earlier, I mean, they could have learned a lot of lessons from Captain America and the Winter Soldier, because that's the perfect example of how to do a spy thriller in the MCU. But it just feels like either they didn't bother to watch it, or they just skimmed through it and they were like, right, so we're gonna take everything that Nick Fury did in Winter Soldier, but replace Hydra with Skrulls, and somehow they just, you know, screwed it up, you know, royally as a result. So that was like a missed opportunity right there.
Yeah.
So I read somewhere in one of the reviews, they said that there's a possibility that that the Rhodey we see trapped in that machine, you know, was shortly after he was injured in Civil War. So going forward, the Rhodey that we've seen up until, you know, Endgame was actually Skrull Rhodey. What do you have any thoughts on that or a take
Yeah,
on?
I don't think Marvel would ever think that far ahead to have a clever idea like that. So I think that's just bullshit.
Because I mean, like, if that's the case, then that really, really just cheapens everything that happened in those movies. It makes
Sure,
it less
yeah,
impactful, you know.
yeah. I don't believe that. I honestly have. I absolutely don't believe that there's any thought that went into this. This has absolutely no connection to to the MCU we've seen. It was just a totally standalone thing. We're not going to see Gaia anymore. Like all that stuff, it was just there to create the story, and that's that. Like none of this is going to have repercussions. None of this is going to boil over. Like it was like cool. We're just going to create this story, about Secret Invasion, and it's not going to have any impact in the grand scheme of things, other than maybe like a brief mention. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, well, remember how to destroy these scrolls and all this," and that's going to be it. That's literally justification. I have absolutely, I would put the odds about 2% that there was actually any type of connection between, the roadie that we see, post whatever end game and then this. I don't believe that at all.
So it was pretty much inconsequential.
Yes. I think it's just people that have too much time on their hands trying to like make things make sense. And honestly, the writers probably are looking at like, huh, that actually that might not have been a bad idea. But I highly doubt anyone actually had the forethought to do anything.
So can I just say the one character that stood out and I thought did a phenomenal job throughout the entire thing was Sonya Falsworth. Because given what she had to deal with, I thought Olivia Colman, or her performance was phenomenal. Her role was pretty good because she was in it just enough to make you wonder. I wonder what she's sort of doing in the background, because you never really quite know where her loyalties lie, because obviously she isn't too keen on helping Nick Fury, but at the same time she's not too keen on standing on the sidelines either. So I thought of all the characters, I thought Sonya Falsworth was probably the only one that actually had any major impact, and who actually did just enough but not too much in the series. Was there any character that stood out to you that you thought
outside of, like I said, I really enjoyed Ben Mendelsohn's performance, even though Talos's character, I really could give or take. But yes, I would totally agree with you. Olivia Colman really did a great job there. She felt like she was really entertaining. But I will say this, right? Why not have what's the Dreyfus, Julia what's that? What's her name?
Valentina?
Yeah, I don't remember. Is that Julia Dreyfus, right? That's
Her character is Countess Valentina.
Okay, thank you. So why not have that be her, right? Like then you kind of have like something that's interchanged in there, and like I feel like they've already had like a similar personality where like she's just kind of like this really like awkward, sarcastic character. I'm like, why not just have her be involved? Because at least it kind of gives it a little bit more like, oh, okay, cool. Like I've seen her, or maybe she tries to like recruit Guy at the end or something. Like, I don't know. Like, I just felt like, it was, if you're trying to help build this kind of like role, right? You're the MC, you're trying to help create this narrative, and you want to have like all these types of feelers out there. Like, to me, it would have been interesting to have her be that character, that Sonya Falsworth's character. Just have that be, Julia release whatever, whatever. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, because it would definitely connect the previous series, and plus it would help set the Thunderbolts, which is supposed to come
exactly
up.
Right. Yeah, because you have her part of it. She's there. Like you could have like small things with some of the characters. Like to me, it was something that you could have helped to build upon it. But I feel like the more they just kind of threw random things in there, the less it actually felt like they cared about this having some type of narrative focus on the MCU as a whole.
So I think we can both agree that Secret Invasion is pretty forgetful, pretty inconsequential, and just poorly executed all the way through, except for the acting. So what's your overall score then for this series or miniseries?
Can we have negatives? Is that allowed in our scoring?
Why not? I mean, this is the first episode where we're reviewing a miniseries, so why not?
Yeah, I won't go negative because I feel like that's just kind of cheap. Like everyone wants to give everything 1s or 5s. I always found that to be cheap. I'm gonna give this a 1.9. I can't give it 2. I just feel like this is really just scraping the bottom of the barrel. I couldn't care about anything. Like Nick Fury, like, finally got his time to shine. And like all it was just like, oh, you're old, you're out of it. He has that like kind of transformation at the graveyard where it's like, oh, I'm gonna get my eye patch and I'm gonna get this. I'm like, is this supposed to be fun or meaningful? Like, what is this supposed to do for me? Like, he obviously doesn't need it. So is this supposed to be like symbolic or something? Like, I don't know. I didn't care for any of the characters, didn't care for what they want to do with the story. Poor, Amelia Clark, like, just cannot find anything that works for her, right? Like,
Right.
it's just always trying to introduce it. I'm like, she cannot play this character that people keep wanting her to be, right? Like, when I watched her in Terminator, I'm like, this person doesn't give me anything that shows that she's going to be capable of this. And then once again, you have this kind of happen. And once again, I feel like she's just poorly handled. So, and then, some things with Talos and blah, blah, blah. And then Gravik was just a bad villain. I just 1.9 out of 5, could not care less. I hope that this gets taken off of Disney Plus at some stage, and it just falls into oblivion.
So I see your 1.9, and I will go 1.8. And
oh my god, you're ruthless.
Look, I mean, during the not only did I subject myself to torture by watching it in one sitting, all right, which was a very stupid and irresponsible thing to do, and I highly recommend that nobody ever do that to themselves unless you really, really are into self-abuse. I just, as a writer, I just feel like there are just so many missed opportunities, and it's just so lazy. You just fall for the same tropes, you fall for the same cliches. You have a lot of loose ends that don't get resolved at the end of the series. The ending was subpar. This is me putting it nicely. The villain is it's Marvel at this point, so all of your villains are one-dimensional, but you have a villain whose focus keeps shifting time and time again. You have a protagonist who initially everybody was rooting for, but by the end, I just felt like I don't think I really like Nick Fury now because he's just such a huge asshole. Like, I get he's supposed to be, a spy and everything, hard living, but I felt more sympathy for Gravik than I did for Nick Fury because of the way that they wrote the character. The biggest, the biggest element that made me scratch my head and wonder why even bother was the harvest, because I just thought to myself, the whole point was to create a spy thriller. Yes, with aliens, I could sort of get behind that, I guess. But as soon as you introduce the harvest into that mix, I just threw up my hands and just said, fuck it. If you're not going to even follow through on your premise, why should I even care about the series? Because the original Secret Invasion storyline was basically the Skrulls infiltrating the superhero community and replacing them with Skrull copies. And I was going to say, if you want to watch a good adaptation of Secret Invasion, watch season 2 of Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That is how you properly adapt Secret Invasion, because it creates tension among the superhero community because they don't know who to trust, and it leads to a split because now nobody knows if they're actually the person they are or if they're Skrulls. The only thing I liked about this miniseries was the fact that none of the Avengers make an appearance. They don't try to call the Avengers. They don't try to rely on superheroes. They try to handle this on their own, which I will give them kudos for, because they did mention in one of the later episodes, hey, why don't you call your friends? And Fury says, well, we can't always rely on our superpowered buddies to help us, which I thought, see, that is a good line. That is a good premise. It's just sad that
Oh, really? They just didn't want to spend money on them, though.
Exactly.
But yes, I get the sentiment. I get what you're getting at. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just sad that the writers decided to follow through on on the very premise that they sold Disney on. So that's my overall score on Secret Invasion, and frankly. And frankly, I mean, unless Marvel can do a complete overhaul, we're going to continue to get shitty subpar products, well into the future. So just piling onto that whole superhero fatigue. So the next time we'll be meeting up is around the Labor Day holiday. Do you have any idea of what movie or TV show you want to take a gander at?
That's a great question. Have not thought that far ahead, but I will get back to you as soon as I know.
Well, if you enjoyed our discussion, please leave a like below and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on on the latest reviews and interviews that we do on the podcast. And let us know in the comments below. Let us know what you think of Secret Invasion. Did you think it was one of the best things since sliced bread, or do you agree that it was a stinker? But other than that, thank you so much for watching the episode, and have a great day. Take it easy.